Hello there. My pipe is broken. I can't find my normal blue bathrobe, so I'm wearing this big, heavy, crocheted cultist robe. That had a rock in the hood for whatever reason. But I do have this. And that must mean it's time for Bedtime Stories with Sean Arthur Cox, or as we like to call it here, VS with S.A.C. Now, when last we left off, William had hidden Bloody John in his bottomless bag, and then strapped the bottomless bag to his leg, to pretend that he was a one-legged beggar, so that he could move about the city of Freeport much more discreetly, the corrupt pirate city of Freeport, much more discreetly. And he had just met up with Olivander in a bar, or in a tavern in whatever, called the Drowned Rat. And that brings us to Chapter 12, Deductive Reasoning. They finished their meal in silence and retreated to Olivander's room. When the door had been safely latched behind them, William plopped down on the bed, and Olivander took a look at his ankle, apologizing for not tending days ago at camp. The boy shrugged and thanked him for taking care of it now. Not much later, his ankle was wrapped firmly, allowing it to take weight without much pain at all. William smiled. Olivander hadn't said a thing about being chosen all night. Perhaps the self-assured hero had changed. Perhaps the separation made him realize that William wasn't special or destined for greatness, that he was really just an ordinary kid way out of his league who just wanted to get home alive and in no more than 2 pieces, providing one of those pieces wasn't his head. "When I saw the leg, I thought something had happened," Olivander said, "but when you pulled off the bag, I knew it. I just knew you'd come out on top. I think you might be chosen after all." Well, so much for acceptance. William cursed under his breath for thinking it. Now Olivander would start saying things like, "So, are you ready to go save the world?" "Seriously," William thought sternly, "stop jinxing yourself." "As I'll ever be," he said aloud. "Now let's get out of this town before—" There came a sharp knock at the door. Again? The boy's idle thoughts had taken an annoying habit of coming true. Perhaps ill fortune came to square accounts for all the moderately good luck he'd had lately, what with his most decided lack of untimely demise. William tried his very best not to think of someone evil there to harass them, or some stranger who'd heard Olivander was in town and had come to ask some favor or other. "Who is it?" Olivander asked, gripping his sword. "Please not adventure," William chanted. "It's Villius Unferth Bloodstone, Honorable Mayor of Freeport, come to ask a favor. Is this the room of the great and legendary Olivander?" "Curses!" William muttered loudly. "At ease," Olivander said, resting a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. "I doubt this will take long." Olivander rose and opened the door wide for Mayor Bloodstone, sweeping his hand in a mostly sincere gesture of welcome. The mayor entered and stood in the center of the room, radiating all the glory he could muster. By no means a tall man, he stood at little more than 5 feet, with heels on. Even William dwarfed him. He had a long and crooked nose, and his waxy blonde hair hung down in unwashed strands like tentacles or rats' tails. A thin, whiskery mustache rested atop his lips, and a patch of equally scruffy hair grew below, reminding Villius of men wanted for riding around in unmarked white carriages and offering small children candies to climb inside. His skin was a sickly pale and clammy, with blue veins showing through. His beady, sunken eyes pierced through the shadows surrounding them and chilled William to the very marrow. In contrast, Villius Unferth Bloodstone's clothes were very fine indeed. He wore long, flowing robes of black velvet with bands of crimson and violet accentuating the seams, sleeves, and collar. A silver pendant with blood-red rubies suspended itself from his thin neck, and on his thin, knobby fingers he wore rings of gold and silver with every combination of jewel and engraving imaginable. The entirety of this single outfit could easily purchase a sizable farm or two. None could doubt that this was a man of wealth and means. Welcome, your high excellency, Sir Baron Olivander Barlow Smythe, Esquire, first Earl of Oxbridge, Lord of Caldno Manor, keeper of the King's land, slayer of dragons, defeater of Helmut the Butcher, conqueror of the Shadowlands, liberator of cities, friend of the meek, and anointed high protector of the 12 realms. The mayor took a moment to catch his breath. William couldn't fathom how long it took him to memorize all that. Olivander didn't want to think about why. Both could tell, however, that anyone who put that much effort into giving such a thorough greeting would probably want a task performed that would take at least as long to do so. The two exchanged knowing glances of annoyance. "Yes, Your Honor?" Olivander asked. William could tell by the inflection that had Ollie written it out, he wouldn't have capitalized the man's title. "First, allow me to take a moment to welcome you to our lovely city, the jewel of the World River, star of the Sixth Realm, hub of travel and trade where all corners of the world can meet in a land of peace and mutual prosperity." William and Olivander exchanged glances again. "Not to seem rude or impatient, your mayorship," Olivander said, "but is there any way we could skip the pleasantries and get to the nature of your visit? I'm afraid my friend and I have a rather important journey ahead of us." "We? Oh yes, of course." Villiers looked at William for the first time since he entered the room. The expression of unmitigated disdain said if the boy were on fire, the mayor would only urinate on him, just enough to shame him, without actually putting out any of the flames. After a quick sneer of derision, he swiftly returned his gaze and false pleasantries to the old barkeep, who seemed to think the same of Bloodstone, as Bloodstone no doubt thought of William. "My dear beloved brother Marcus, hero to the people, champion of goodness and virtue, sought to defend our downtrodden populace from a band of brigands and monsters that have been haunting the roads and harassing travelers to and from our fair port town." "And you want me to help him?" "Oh, no. Oh, I fear it is too late for that. He's been gone a fortnight already, and I suspect, though it pains me to do so, that he is dead." Villiers Bloodstone affected a sniffle. "And you're hoping we can resurrect him? That's not my specialty." "No, of course not, but I should very much like to give my dear, beloved brother a proper burial for all the people to see." "And do you have any idea where his body might be?" "In the caves, I suspect," the mayor said quickly. "Not but 3¼ miles off the road toward the west, 2½ miles north of town, just past the stream. You can't miss it." "Please," Olivander said, "may I have a moment to consult with my traveling companion?" "But of course," Bloodstone said, "and of course you will be well compensated." The mayor stood watching them expectantly, hands folded, his eyes drifting between the two. "Alone?" Olivander clarified. "Yes, of course," Villiers said, quickly moving to the door. "I'll just be downstairs in the lobby." The wormy fellow slipped out the door, shutting it behind him. After the latch clicked and boots stomped down the stairs, Olivander turned to William. "So what did you make of him?" he asked the boy. "He needs a bath?" "True," Olivander replied, not expecting so simple an answer. "What else?" "He's creepy?" "Correct," the hero said. "We're not helping him." "Why?" William asked, confused. "Do you need to ask?" "Well, clearly because we don't have time, but why so blunt, so empathetic? The man lost his brother." "No," Olivander corrected. "Lost implies he's not sure what's become of him. That man had his brother Marcus killed." "Oh, come now," William said, plopping back down on the bed. "You can't know that just from 2 sentences, can you?" "Let's look at the evidence, shall we?" Olivander stood before William straight back, using broad hand gestures to underscore just how important and accurate his arguments were. He reminded the boy rather of his early teachers back in Barrow's End. If he could have found a slate board in the room, Olivander would no doubt be preparing a list for class discussion. "First, the man's name is Villiers Unferth Bloodstone," the barkeep said, pacing. "Oh, come on, you can't assume he's guilty based on his name." Olivander stopped squarely in his spot and glared at the boy wearily, daggers shooting from his eyes. "Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt the lecture. I'm not finished." William looked down, shuffled his feet, and apologized. Olivander resumed his pacing, coming to a complete halt and turning sharply on his heels. Every time he made a new point, boots clicking on the wooden floor. "Names are important, William. Villiers sounds like villain. Further, his last name, Bloodstone. Stone is cold and hard. Blood refers to violence or life. He's cold-blooded and violent. What about Unferth? William asked. Clearly not every part of his name will imply he killed his brother. That would be absurd. But the first and last name clearly make a compelling case for his fratricide. Really? Asked William skeptically. I agree it's a bad name, but it's hardly proof of villainy. Besides, wouldn't his brother's name also be Bloodstone, too? Or be Bloodstone also? Like I said, blood can represent life and stone strength. His brother Marcus is strong and full of life. Vilius is cold-hearted and violent. That doesn't make sense. How can the same name mean different? Do you want the benefit of my years of experience or not? Olivander asked, voice stiff and stern. Yes, sir, William replied sheepishly. Continuing. He's short and rat-like. Thin, long, crooked nose like a rat, hair hanging down in wiry little rat tails. Rats are notorious scavengers, thieves, and plague-bearers. No good ever comes of rats, hence expressions such as dirty rat, rat someone out, and river rat for pirates. People often behave as the creatures they resemble. He resembles a rat. He is therefore untrustworthy. William felt as though he should be taking notes on the use and abuse of superficial evidence. Third, he is the mayor of the most corrupt city in the Sixth Realm, a festering eyesore upon society in which vice and ill will flourish, and indeed seems condoned by the very constabulary sworn to uphold the laws of decency. His failure to act against them implies tacit approval, and his claims that this city is a fair jewel support the supposition that he, in fact, encourages such criminal behaviors. William nodded. While circumstantial, the evidence seemed at least something to consider for a change. Fourth, he claims to espouse fairness and goodness, but given the nature of most business conducted in Freeport and the considerable wealth he has amassed, he is clearly a profiteer on evil, giving it government sanction through kickbacks and extortion. We can assume, unless he is a great fool, that he is wholly aware of the nature of this business and still revels in its spoils enough to claim no wrong as being committed. As he has proven himself capable of memorizing the entirety of my tales, we must therefore conclude that he is not a simpleton, but rather supports profit at the direct expense of others, both economically and physically. Agreed, William said. Fifth, his brother, an alleged champion of the people and upholder of justice and virtue, allegedly died some time ago. Yet no rumor so far has reached my ears that such a brother was dealing with such a problem. This demonstrates either the non-existence of the brother or the false nature of his adventure, turning the exercise into an effort aimed at driving us from town, in which case, in turning down his request, no difference is made, and we need make no efforts to pursue his wild goose chase. Or, supposing his claims are true, and he does have a brother, and said brother did in fact go on an adventure for the betterment of good and noble travelers, we are forced to ask why Vilius sent no search parties to aid a brother missing for 2 weeks, when the place he allegedly went to was a mere couple hours away. Surely he would have worried sooner, yes? I suppose so, William said, head swimming in points and arguments and hypotheticals. His lack of concern betrays his utter disregard for his brother's wholesome nature and activities. Vilius is a devout villain, his brother a much-beloved hero. Surely such a worm cannot abide the actions of a man, blood relative or no, whose very existence undermines the scoundrel's schemes and values. Therefore, he wouldn't care about his noble brother's death unless it served a purpose. Which is? I'm glad you asked, Olivander said, smiling as William took the bait. In a city that thrives on evil, the presence of goodness, particularly a hero among that minority of repressed wholesomeness, threatens the nefarious status quo. A champion of virtue inspires virtue in others and puts evil to flight, just as one candle lights others and chases away shadow. How then would our vile mayor flourish in such an environment where it is obligated to exercise restraint, show moral fortitude, and do an honest day's work? He wouldn't, nay, couldn't. So he makes sure the body is returned home and given a public burial, perhaps a statue with the engraved words, "Here lies Marcus, who died fighting for goodness." The message to those huddled pockets of virtue is clear. Goodness will be punished severely. Hold on, let me process, William said, struggling to keep up. Olivander nodded and stood, eyeing the boy patiently. William's brow furrowed as he wrote mental notes in the air, occasionally erasing or scratching out ideas he seemed to have gotten wrong. Then, when William was ready, his eyes widened and he gave a nod. Okay, continue. What number was I on? William counted on his fingers, then counted again. 6, I think. Or 7 if you counted the bit about sending a message as its own separate point. 7th, then, Olivander said, and perhaps the most damning of all. Villius knew precisely where to find the bandits. If they plagued his town so, presumably operating in secret, how did he know not just where, but exactly where they would be? He hardly seems the brave type to adventure out where his life may be in danger, else he would seek his brother himself. One could attribute his knowledge to spies, but the man knew landmarks, implying a personal, intimate familiarity. As previously established, since he would not go where he feared for his life, but had clearly gone to the bandits' hideout, we are forced to conclude that he is in league with the bandits. At its most benign level, his dealings would be limited to bribes and payoffs. However, given the rivalry inherent in their beliefs and the message that needed to be sent to those who would do good, we can safely assume his dealings facilitated an ambush and betrayal of his dear, beloved brother. Finished? William asked cautiously. I think so. And you reasoned all that out in the 30 seconds it took him to put 2 sentences out there. Thereabouts, yes? William said in puzzled amazement. So, what do we do? Kill him, obviously, Olivander said. Now, in the lobby, with everyone watching? William's eyes bulged in disbelief. Not necessarily. We could bring him back into the room, or get him in the square. The time or place is immaterial. The important thing is the villain gets his comeuppance. William shook his head. No. That's all pretty convincing, I admit. But there's no hard evidence. We can't just kill someone without any concrete, tangible proof. And where would we find this proof? Olivander asked, humoring the boy. Well, I suppose it'd be at the cave, the boy reasoned. And do we have time to walk all the way over there, look about for clues for some indeterminate amount of time, come all the way back, present the evidence, and only then dispense sentence on our wayward mayor? Well, with you, gathering evidence probably wouldn't take that long, so... William stammered, drawing it out, trying his best to dissuade the man from acting as judge, jury, and executioner. Do we have time to spend half a day pursuing evidence to support a foregone conclusion? No, but... And do we wish to leave a known murderer in charge of a city where good people suffer and are daily oppressed? Alleged murderer, William interjected. Very well, alleged murderer, but confirmed corrupter of virtue and full supporter of evil acts. We should leave him unpunished. Well, no, but without evidence. You can't have it both ways, William, Olivander said. Which will it be? Do we spend time we don't have finding proof to convict a man of a crime he's all but confessed to? Do we save ourselves the trouble, knowing full well he's guilty but lacking evidence? Or do we leave the villain in charge? Choose. William sat, thinking intently. Leaving Villius Bloodstone in control of a city of villains was out of the question, which left only 2 options. Was it better to execute a man clearly guilty but lacking evidence in order to save a town that may or may not already lie beyond any salvation? Or was the right decision to risk an entire town, his own beloved Barrow's End, to gain proof of one man's wrongdoing, rather than condemning him on the slight chance he was innocent? He had left for help almost 3 weeks ago. That seemed a long time for a hostile army to camp without making a planned move or being discovered and reacting. Whatever would happen to Barrow's End probably already had. Further, it didn't seem right to leave the body of one of the only good men the city had ever seen to lie and rot in some forgotten cave. And to murder one's own brother for what? Profit? Spite? William's stomach churned and twisted at the thought's hideousness. Villius had to be punished for his crimes, and he had to be punished fairly, or else the sentence would be meaningless, a mockery of the justice it purported to uphold. We get proof, William said resolutely. Very well. Pack your things. You should leave immediately. Me? What about you? The boy clearly hadn't seen this coming. I'm not in the habit of traipsing off through the countryside into danger when I can avoid it. What about that time you challenged Olmac, the troll of Riverford Bridge, on a drunken... Okay, yes, Olivander confessed. That has been my modus operandi in the past. But I'm old. I'm tired. I own a business now. I don't take risks unnecessarily anymore. If you want to gather evidence, that's fine. I will wait for you right here in this room. But I have seen the same scheme a minimum of 5 times per year for the last 30 years. That is literally over 100 times, and each and every time it's been the hero's jealous and evil sibling, often in a position of power, and either desperate to hold it despite his brother's growing popularity, or desperate to gain power the heroic sibling may have has by having him killed. Like they say, there are only 7 basic villainous plots in the world. All others are variations or combinations thereof. William huffed and protested, but Olivander refused to relent, and in the end he went to the lobby to fetch Villiers Bloodstone and tell him the decision that had been reached. Or, at least, the bit about William and William alone seeking the body. But this child, alone? How can he possibly accomplish what my esteemed brother could not? Neither William nor Olivander missed the derision that laced the words esteemed. Olivander surreptitiously slid his hand to the hilt of his blade and raised an eyebrow to William, as if to ask, "Do we really need to drag this out any longer?" William gave his head an almost imperceptible shake. "Let me assure you," the heroic barkeep said, "that this boy, nay, this young man, is more than capable. He's killed 6 wolves and several skeletons at the same time on his own. He took down Captain Longshanks and his crew single-handed. I think he can handle a few bandits." "Actually," William stammered, but Olivander cut him off. "You mean this boy is responsible for what happened to the scalawag?" the mayor asked in a tone that struck William as being just a little too eager for comfort. "Well, He certainly is," Olivander said, patting the boy on the back. "Now, if that isn't the start of a fine heroic pedigree, I don't know what is." "How very good to know." The mayor rubbed his hands together slightly under the folds of his robes. If he had had a longer mustache, William imagined he'd be twisting it. "Very well," Bloodstone said as he stormed from the room. "What's one more body?" "Look, Olivander, about those things you said I did. I know, stunning work. I understand you're modest, that you don't like me boasting about you. But it comes with the territory. It's all part of being chosen. Don't worry, you'll get used to it." "But I understand. Meanwhile, you need to get going. You don't have much time." William sighed and slung the bottomless bag on his back. He then checked that his sword hung securely from his belt, and the map still sat in his pocket. Borrowing a few copper from Olivander, he bought some supplies, mostly torches and a 10-foot pole, which he kept in his bag. Then he made his way to the road, out of town, and headed north toward adventure, alone as usual, but for the first time, knowingly, and of his own volition. And that's where we'll stop for now. We will pick up next time with William on his first full-on solo adventure, not just... I suppose it's all been full-on solo adventures. Olivander hasn't been much help, has he? Well, that's where we'll pick up next time regardless. Until next time, have good dreams.